A wave of political unrest is sweeping through colonial French Cameroon over the controversial re-election of 92-year-old President Paul Biya from Douala to Yaoundé in Garou. Protesters are no longer voicing dissent merely in the street, but are challenging the very core of a political structure long accused of silencing its citizens. The unfolding crisis underscores a deeper continental struggle where power and legitimacy clash within fragile democracies under the weight of age-old political dominance. Now, while we look at what is happening right in Cameroon, we are moving over to the global scene. United States foreign policy takes a sharp turn eastward as President Donald Trump's Asia tour gains traction amid renewed talks on military cooperation and missile support. All eyes on his anticipated meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping, an encounter expected to test whether diplomacy can prevail in a world still reeling from the geopolitical aftershocks of the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, welcome to the Flash News. All this and more we will be diving into the details in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Tabitha Arko. Let's begin. Tensions continues to rise as of today in French Cameroon following the re-election of President Biya, as protests spread from Garou to Douala and Yaoundé, culminating late Monday night in the burning of the ruling CPDM party headquarters in the capital. The unrest follows the October 27 declaration by the Constitutional Council confirming that the 92-year-old Paul Biya secured 53.66% of the votes in the October 12 presidential election. The outcome, viewed by many as preordained, has been met with widespread outrage, rejection, and demand for transparency. Across social media, citizens reacted with a mix of dark humor and despair, lamenting what they believe will be 7 more years of hardship, economic stagnation, and repression. Now, as the protest and unrest deepens, civilians are no longer lost waiting to be heard. They are dutifully seeking the seat of power. And we see that over on Monday night, the Cameroon's People's Democratic Party headquarters was set ablaze with fire seen raiding the entire building. Let's take a look at the scene. This action follows the first outbreak where the unrest began of a people's demand for reform in Garou, a stronghold of opposition candidate Issa Chiroma Bakri, leader of the FSNT party. As the results were being announced, hundreds of his supporters gathered outside his residence, declaring him the people's president. Moments later, gunfire erupted. Witnesses reported that security forces opened fire on unarmed civilians, leaving at least 2 people dead and several injured. Now, this symbolizes what many view as the silencing of popular will. In Douala, the nation's economic hub, Monday began with shuttered markets and intensified patrols by the police and gendarmerie. The burial of Paul Mohammed, a young man reportedly killed during weekend clashes, quickly turned into a protest march. Mourners chanted for justice, denouncing what they described as systemic oppression and militarization. Now, by evening, crowds had erected makeshift barricades in several neighborhoods, blocking access roads and clashing sporadically with security forces. Witnesses reported internet disruptions and arbitrary arrest of those recording or live streaming the demonstrations. You could imagine that. In the capital, over in Yaoundé, a tense calm gave way to chaos late Monday night when angry demonstrators set fire to the headquarters of the ruling party near the Zinga district. Witnesses described the scenes of smoke billowing from the compound as police struggled to disperse protesters who accused the regime of stealing the people's mandate. Firefighters arrived hours later to contain the blaze, but much of the structure had already been gutted. Now, the government has not issued a formal statement, though security forces have since sealed off major roads leading to the area. Now we see that the attack marks a sharp escalation in post-election violence we've been seeing in recent days and giving you subsequent reports as these issues unfold. This also signals deep public frustration and a growing sense of defiance against a regime seen as immovable, for how many decades? As protests reached, Nobel prison in Douala was reportedly breached, with chaotic scenes captured on video showing inmates fleeing amid gunfire. Eyewitnesses claimed some members of the security forces may have intentionally weakened the perimeter in response to mounting unrest. Also, authorities have yet to confirm the number of escapees or casualties. Security analysts now fear a possible spillover to Kendonge Central Prison in Yaoundé, notorious for housing political detainees and Ambazonian activists. Now, heavy military presence also has been observed in surrounding neighborhoods as authorities attempt to prevent further unrest. Also adding to public anger, opposition figure Cabrel Libby, leader of the PCRN, congratulated President Biya on his victory, a statement that drew immediate backlash. Many citizens and activists view the move as a betrayal at a time when civilians are being killed and detained. The message has further fractured opposition ranks, also isolating Libya and strengthening solidarity among protesters demanding Biya's resignation. Analysts warn that Cameroon now faces one of its greatest and gravest political crises in decades. But with what we are seeing, will the voice of the people take hold? Will the voice of the people be adhered to? Will they be listened to? Will they be heard? Now we see that Biya's ninth term in office has come to symbolize both political stagnation and erosion of democratic institutions. The 92-year-old leader's grip on power, bolstered by the military and a loyal elite, stands in stark contrast to the demands of a restless, impoverished population, like what we are seeing on the scenes in the videos happening right over there in Cameroon, French Cameroon. Now we see that the militarization of daily life, frequent internet shutdowns, and arbitrary detentions have fueled resentment, transforming what began as election protests into a broader cry for dignity and reform. Now, this is what is happening in French Cameroon. What about Southern Cameroon? What is ongoing? What is going on in Ambazonia? How are the people of Ambazonia reeling from these post-election protests? Now, we see that the election in Ambazonia is quite different. What's happening right there is different. From the scene, the election has long been met with silence and rejection, as His Excellency President Samuel Ikome Sako structurally states Ambazonia is not part of colonial French Cameroon election. Now, these were the statements of the president prior before the election, and now this is post-election. How are the people faring? What are they doing? What's happening in the regions? Remember, these regions have been through a lot of struggles for self-determination, and have been stricken by the destruction of war, bloodshed, and neglect. But what is happening right there? Let's take a look. Right there on your screen, you can see that there is an absolute level of tranquility and calmness in Amazonian region in Bamenda, that is Bamenda. So what does that sense to you? Two nations, two realities. One is undergoing protest, another is unshaken. However, we see that Cameroon's future now hinges on whether the government can de-escalate tensions or whether repression will further radicalize the population. Observers and human rights groups are urging an independent investigation into election-related killings and abuses, transparent verification of results, national dialogue involving opposition, civil society, and youth representatives, and urgent action to address corruption and economic hardship. Without these steps, experts warn the unrest could harden into a nationwide rebellion, one that neither the state nor its aging ruler may be able to contain. As night falls again over Yaoundé, Garao, and Daola, the air remains thick with uncertainty and determination. The burning of the CPDM headquarters has become more than an act of rage. It is a symbol of a people who feel they have nothing left to lose. It is also a symbol of a people who are going after the seat of power, this time no longer about them, no longer about their communities. Their defiance lies in what they believe to be their final hope. That freedom, long suppressed, might yet rise from the ashes of a crumbling regime, like the one we see, where just a man is trying to consolidate and monopolize power. Now, moving over to the global scene. The United States President Donald Trump announced on Tuesday that the United States will deliver the first batch of missiles to Japan's self-defense forces this week, signaling deeper military cooperation during his first Asia tour since returning to office. Let's take a look.
But I'm delighted to report that I've just approved the first batch of missiles. You saw a couple of them coming down with me. I hugged them. We need them. They're the best in the world. Nobody has them like we have them. They all want our missiles. That's the problem. Everybody wants them. But it's the first batch of missiles to be delivered to the Japanese self-defense forces for Japan's F-35s. And they're coming this week, so they're ahead of schedule. So I just want to tell Madam Prime Minister, they've been waiting for those missiles, and we got them here right away as soon as I heard about it. I want to thank former Senator, a great gentleman, by the way. He was so popular, but I took him out and I made him Secretary of State.
Announcement came as President Trump met Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi in Tokyo and later addressed the U.S. Navy personnel aboard the USS George Washington at the Yokosuka Naval Base, the headquarters of the U.S. 7th Fleet. Now, President Donald Trump is right there praising Japan's Prime Minister. Let's take a listen.
Look, these are tremendous sanctions. These are very big. Those are against their two big oil companies, and we hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled. This woman is a winner. So, we've become very close friends all of a sudden because terrible war, our bond has grown over 8 decades into the beautiful friendship that we have. It's a foundation of time high. That means we're doing something right. And I have such respect for Japan and the country. And now I have a really great respect for the new and incredible Prime Minister. And I have to say this, the first female Prime Minister in the history of Japan. This woman is a winner. So, we've become very close friends all of a sudden because terrible war, our bond has grown over 8 decades into the beautiful friendship that we have. It's a foundation of time high. That means we're doing something right. And I have such respect for Japan and the country. And now I have a really great respect for the new and incredible Prime Minister. And I have to say this, the first female Prime Minister in the history of Japan.
President Trump's Asian tour is a clear show of the relationship the United States is building with the Japanese government. He also mentioned that the delivery for Japanese F-35 fighter jets was ahead of schedule, though he did not disclose the type or number of missiles. The deal highlights Washington's renewed push to strengthen defense ties with Tokyo amid growing regional instability. During the Tokyo meeting, Trump and Takaichi also signed a joint document focused on securing rare earth and critical minerals, seen as essential for defense technology and economic resilience. Japan, Washington's closest military ally in Asia, is expected to raise its defense budget under Takechi's government. Now we see that Prime Minister Takaichi reaffirmed Japan's commitment to expanding its defense capabilities and also contributing more actively to regional stability. She described Japan's security environment as increasingly severe and stressed that maintaining peace would require stronger deterrence and preparedness rather than diplomacy alone. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry responded to the Trump-Takaichi meeting by urging both nations to ensure their security cooperation promotes peace rather than tension. Spokesperson Gyo Jae-kun called on Japan to consider the security concerns of a neighboring state. Now, also earlier, U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth addressed American troops at Yokosuka, emphasizing the administration's peace through strength, a strategy, and a renewed focus on national security. He underscored the administration's priority on reinforcing U.S. military readiness while maintaining close cooperation with allies such as Japan. Trump has proposed renaming the Department of Defense the Department of War, a move that would require congressional approval and reflect his administration's harder security posture. So we would say the Pete Hegseth is now the Secretary of War. Yokosuka, located about 45 kilometers south of Tokyo, is home to approximately 50,000 U.S. military personnel and the world's only forward-deployed aircraft carrier strike group. The base remains a key element of Washington's Indo-Pacific defense network. Meanwhile, while the Sun, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent met with Japan's Finance Minister Satsuki Katayama to discuss economic cooperation and monetary policy. Both sides also explored joint investment opportunities involving Mitsubishi's heavy industries, particularly in energy and automotive projects. A lot is going on with Japan. Japan is moving and building towards a military dominance and economic growth. Trump's visit marks a clear signal of Washington's intent to reinforce its presence in the Indo-Pacific through both military and economic channels. The early missile delivery, renewed defense commitment, and resource security agreement underscores a stronger U.S.-Japan alliance aimed at deterring regional threats and balancing China's growing influence in the region. Now, moving over and speaking about the recent development with President Donald Trump's sanction on Russia oil. This began recently. We see that Russia's second largest oil producer, Lukoil, announced on Monday it will sell its international assets following the latest wave of U.S. sanctions targeting Moscow's energy sector. The move marks one of the most significant corporate reactions since President Donald Trump imposed new measures against the Kremlin. Earlier, before now, Putin had spoken against the sanction, but is Donald Trump winning at distance? We see that the sanctions announced last week affect Lukoil and Rosneft, Russia's two largest oil companies, in a bid to restrict Moscow's ability to finance its ongoing war in Ukraine. The United Kingdom has also introduced similar restrictions, targeting both companies and dozens of tankers accused of helping Russia bypass export limits. Let's take a look.
Answered having to do with the various forms of missiles and everything else that we're looking at, but we don't think that's going to be necessary. We would like to see them just take the line that has been formed over quite a long period of time and go and let's, go home.
Lukoil said the investment would be carried out under a wind-down license from the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, with the possibility of an extension to ensure uninterrupted operations. Now, among its largest holdings aboard a 75% stake in Iraq's West Corner 2 oil field, which produces more than 480,000 barrels of oil per day. the Neftochim Burgas refinery in Bulgaria, and the Petrotel refinery in Romania. The company also supplies oil to Hungary, Slovakia, and Turkey's Star refinery, which rely heavily on Russian crude. So how much impact is this having in Russia? The United States and its Western allies have intensified efforts to curb Russia's energy revenue, seen as a key source of funding for the invasion of Ukraine. Lukoil, which contributes about 2% of global oil output, said it remains focused on maintaining stability during the transition. Meanwhile, Ukraine has urged Washington to expand sanctions to include the entire Russian oil sector, arguing that partial measures are insufficient to disrupt the Kremlin's war economy. In a related development, Russia announced the successful testing of a nuclear-powered cruise missile designed to evade existing defense system. President Vladimir Putin said the Borisnik missile is nearing deployment, underscoring Moscow's continued defiance of Western pressure. But while Putin has made a statement and Russia are moving forward with this testing missile, President Donald Trump has this to say about Putin's move. Let's take a look.
They know we have a nuclear submarine, the greatest in the world, right off their shore. So, I mean, it doesn't have to go 8,000 miles. And, they're not playing games with us. We're not playing games with them either. We test missiles all the time, but, you know, we do have a submarine, a nuclear submarine. We don't need to go 8,000 miles. And I don't think it's an appropriate thing for Putin to be saying either, by the way. He ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now in its soon 4th year. That's what he ought to do instead of testing missiles.
President Trump says Putin has to get the war end. Now, the Russian President Putin described the latest sanctions on him and his nation as an unfriendly act that could further strain relations with Washington, but signaled openness to talks with the United States on a potential settlement in Ukraine. Lukoil confirmed it has begun reviewing bids from potential buyers for its overseas operations, but did not disclose which assets are on the market. Now, away from that and moving over to what is happening in Jamaica, a very disastrous situation right there over at the Caribbean. Hurricane Melissa, one of the most powerful storms ever recorded, continued its destructive path across the Caribbean earlier Tuesday, killing at least 7 people and forcing mass evacuations as Jamaica prepared for direct landfall. The Category 5 storm brought sustained winds of 175 mph and storm surged up to 15 feet, making it the strongest hurricane in Jamaican history and the most intense globally in 2025, according to the U.S. National Hurricane Center. And more than 120,000 residents were evacuated from Santiago de Cuba ahead of the storm's arrival, while emergency officials in Jamaica warned of catastrophic impact as the system crawled toward the island at just 2 mph. Authorities confirmed that 7 people have died, 3 in Jamaica, 3 in Haiti, and 1 in the Dominican Republic, even before the hurricane made landfall. Also, 13 others were injured in Jamaica during storm preparations, most while securing rooftops or properties. One health worker in St. Elizabeth Parish was killed when the 3 collapsed on his home. Now, the island's health ministry urged residents to avoid unnecessary risks during last-minute preparations and to contact emergency lines if assistance was needed. At 2 a.m. Eastern Time, the NHC reported that Hurricane Melissa was located about 135 miles southwest of Kingston, moving northeast. Winds of hurricane strength extended up to 30 miles from its center, with tropical storm force winds reaching 195 miles outward. The storm is expected to make landfall in western Jamaica later Tuesday before tracking across the island and towards southeastern Cuba and the Bahamas. Meteorologists warned that Melissa's slow movement would increase flooding and wind damage. Air pressure in its eye dropped to 906 millibars, a signal of exceptional intensity. Jamaica's ambassador to the United States, Anthony Anderson, called on the diaspora to mobilize resources for disaster relief. Jamaican embassy in Washington said it was coordinating with the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management to distribute aid effectively once the storm passes. Meanwhile, what is happening in Jamaica? The Jamaica Defense Force activated its National Reserve to assist with search and rescue, logistics, and relief accommodation and coordination. Troops are also working alongside the local authorities and emergency agencies to secure communities and maintain order. Meteorology said Hurricane Melissa had broken records for storm structure and intensity. Its eye reached a temperature of minus 3.61 degrees, the Sanctions, the warmest ever recorded for a tropical cyclone, signaling extreme strength. Experts said the storm was nearing the theoretical limit for how strong a hurricane can become in the Atlantic basin. After Jamaica, Melissa is expected to move over southeastern Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti before reaching the southeastern Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos. Authorities across the region have issued evacuation orders and flood warnings. Disaster response teams are on standby as the Caribbean praises for what forecasters say could be one of the most damaging storms in decades. Now, this is what is ongoing in Jamaica. We hope that there will definitely be relief missions to aid the people. Until next time, this is where I'll be drawing the curtain on today's Flash News. Stay tuned for Undaunted at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. as we bring you breaking news from the home front. I am Tabitha Ako. Do have a pleasant day and stay safe.